Sunday, March the 1st is the day residents of Kerawa, Marina, Zariawa, Hashimawa and Ungwa Musa villages in Giwa and Igabi local government councils would want to banish from their memories, as bandits in their hundreds carried out what was described as coordinated attacks in the villages, and in the process, killing about 50 people with cars and houses also burnt. A visit to the communities show a picture of a people who are in dire need of basic amenities like hospitals, road infrastructure, and even GSM network. But in spite of their socio-economic challenges, they had lived peacefully until Sunday when the bandits came calling.
The bandits came in their numbers and boasted to us that not even the government and the security agents can stop them from accomplishing their mission in our area.
These attacks, which lasted several hours, has left many devastated, turning women into widows and rendering many children fatherless. The people say they are now so scared as they have no other place to call home.
The bandits killed Goshi and many other people in this community and in other villages around here. They also burnt houses and vehicles, as well as rustled our cows.
Governor Nasser El-Rufai, top government officials, as well as heads of security agencies abandoned all other duties to visit Kerawa and surrounding villages to commiserate with the people.
As those that have been placed at the position of leadership, and the responsibility for protecting these people rests squarely on my shoulders and that of my colleagues, I also came to apologize for our failure to fully protect them. We are doing the best we can, and we are hoping that this banditry will end very soon because the security agencies are taking the war to the bandits.
From Kerawa, the governor and his entourage proceeded to Marina and Zariwaya communities where many lives were also lost during the attacks.
In Kaduna State, we have zero tolerance for bandits. We don't give them amnesty. We don't negotiate with them. We have asked the security agencies to just wipe them out.
In the last 1 year, Kaduna State has had its fair share of security challenges ranging from banditry, kidnapping and armed robbery. While security agencies appear to be doing their best to tackle the problem, stakeholders, including Governor Nasser El-Rufai, believe that the time has come for the review of the ECOWAS Treaty on Free Movement of Persons and Goods.
Certainly, this is not the best of times for any governor in the space of Governor El-Rufai or anyone in Borno as well as Yobe State at the point, because we've gathered that unconfirmed reports indicate that suspected Boko Haram insurgents in Dapchi town may have attacked that part of the state, where more than 100 schoolgirls were abducted in February 2018.
That the insurgents may have burnt houses, but at this point, military officials have not confirmed the attacks.
The Dapchi community has been attacked several times since 2018 when it came under the spotlight at the time of the abduction of those schoolgirls. One of the abducted schoolgirls in 2018, Leah Sharibu, is still in custody of the insurgents. This and several other issues are to be tackled in this conversation that Malkwe is holding right now. Malkwe.
Thank you, Ayo and Kayode. It's actually a little confusing as to where to start sometimes with security matters. But let me add to this. I just saw a tweet now from Ahmed Salkida, who's tweeting and saying the Nigerian army pushed back ISWAP fighters in Damboa after 5 hours of gun battle today. He wrote this tweet yesterday, that's the 4th of March. He says scores of dead bodies of the insurgents and their 18 abandoned trucks lead to the ground. Some security officials, including members of the civilian JTF and hunters, also lost their lives. But we have with us this morning perhaps somebody who can make sense of, of all of this for us, from the internal security challenges that we face to the fight against insurgents in the northeast of the country, which has international dimensions. We have with us this morning Major General Cecil, He's retired now. Major General Cecil Esika-Igbe, retired, even though they say generals never retire. But we thank you for coming on Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thank you, Mark, for having me.
Can you help us sort this out? In recent times, there's been heavy criticism about how the military is handling the security situation with regards to insurgents. There have been a lot of conversation on what we need as a country as to whether or not the current security arrangement is adequate. Conversations around state policing are back. Conversations around regional security is also back. The Nigerian police force has been talking about community policing. There's been some controversy around that, and people are wondering whether all of this are the same. But when you see the spate of attacks, just on Monday, 51 people were buried in Kaduna State. We understand that the police has launched an offensive on the forests in Kaduna State, the Biningwari and in all of those areas, and that perhaps the death we saw could be as a result of the revenge. My colleagues just read a news item there on an attack on Dapchi community. Can you help us make sense of this spate of attacks that we're seeing and where we are in the fight against bandits and insurgents in the country?
Thank you. It's not completely a fair assessment to say the military are not doing well. You see, insurgency is a protracted crisis, but you need a deliberate plan, to tackle it. And the military have been doing their own in face of limitations in technology and intelligence gathering. So what you really need to do, like is done globally, is what they call ISTAR. You have, intelligence, you have surveillance, target acquisition, and reconnaissance. And these are propelled by technology, which we don't really have. So they need, to take advantage of technology. For instance, in the killing of the Iranian general in the Middle East, it was done from Arizona. So the physical presence of troops really in insurgency is the last resort that can ever give you any result. So it's propelled by technology. You need drones, to be able to take isolated leaders of these insurgent groups, to be able to scatter them and be able to have a full grip of the situation. This is not a war for armored tanks. It's not a war for fighting jets. It's purely intelligence-driven operation with technology. Be that as it may, you know that the Boko Haram has split it into two. You have the local Boko Haram and you have the ISWAP. That is the one that has a relationship with Al-Qaeda as everywhere. So what we really need to do, first of all, we must identify who these enemies are. Without a complete identification of who truly these enemies are, you won't have a correct diagnosis. And without a correct diagnosis, we'll just be doing what we're doing now, trying to see the best we can do in the ugly situation. What I actually suggest is that we need to rejig, a security architecture that will take into consideration the vital need for technology in the pursuit of our counterinsurgency. On the banditry, what is banditry? What is confronting us now is called rural banditry, which is an armed violence driven, by, the need to plunder and to steal, of course, motivated by economic considerations. They take place in rural areas. So to be able to tackle these insurgents or the bandits, which is about armed robbery, kidnapping, cattle rustling, and raid in villages, you need an intelligence-driven, deliberate operation. Now, what about the operational challenges? What about the political will? We need to bring up all this to the fore. I do not like to look at symptoms rather than the causes of the issue. I do not look at the causes of these problems. First is the proliferation of small arms and light weapons. What have we done to arrest this ugly trend?
We've closed the borders.
Yes, they close the borders. No, we don't have the technology to monitor this. And you also know that to hide these weapons are easy for criminals to do. So if without the appropriate technology to monitor our borders is so vast that you cannot really monitor it effectively unless technology is deployed. Now, you talk of, after the banditry, you also talk of drugs, the menace of drugs in society today. By the last statistics, you have cannabis, about 10 million Nigerians are in cannabis, opioid, about 2.6 million Nigerians. Then you talk of, tranquilizers and stabilizers, which is about 290,000 people. Then you also talk of heroin and cocaine, 900,000 for cocaine, 850,000 for heroin. You see, the menace of this drug use is something we have to look at. But what baffles me is, why do we like ad hoc arrangement in tackling issues? There you hear presidential committee for taking of small arms and light weapons. Whereas the United Nations and ECOWAS have clearly prescribed the establishment of a national commission. Now you talk of a committee to look at drugs headed by General Marwa. What about the institutions that are in place, like NDLEA? Don't you want to fortify them and give them the appropriate platform to do their jobs? We should move from committee system to a deliberate plan to tackling these menaces.
Well, you have stated a number of solutions, and you also talked about some of the things. You talk about lack of investment in technology. We do not have the technology. But General, some will argue that we have been in this battle for a while. We have been in this battle for it's well over 10 years now, at least the physical battle, the physical side of the battle, because there are those who argue that the ideology that Boko Haram pushes, the ideology that is driving a number of the sects, because we also understand that even in Kaduna, it was a sect that took over the forests. And so they are also being dealt with as terrorists because they have been terrorizing the people in that particular locality. That the ideology that pushes and drives this armed resistance that we're seeing has been around for a very long time. Now, the question is, knowing that we need technology, are we making moves to invest in the technology that we need? We can't keep talking about technology, knowing that this is something that we need to defeat this war or significantly reduce the impact of this war on our civilian population, and we're not making any moves in that direction.
Yes, it calls for concern, and well, I just had excuse me, I just had the governor admitted his failure, and this is legendary, and I want to salute his courage for accepting that he has failed and a lot needs to be done. You see, there needs to be political will in doing some of these things. Without political will, you cannot go far. And we must believe. Oh,
that is the governor admitting his failure. I mean, yes. But that should be every leadership. That should be leadership.
That's what I'm saying.
At every level. I mean, shouldn't we hear the president, for instance, admitting that they failed the people who were killed? This
is the beginning of such a proactive effort and a deliberate plan to say, yes, we have not been doing this well, we will do better. And I think many occasions too, the president has also said that, yes, there are problems. He has acknowledged these problems. And I think they're also making frantic efforts to do this. You see, it's not everything that they do at that level that you bring to the fore. The people want to see actions. The people want to see progress in whatever is being planned at the strategic level. So the president acknowledges the fact that there are problems, and they are making frantic efforts to solving these problems. But be that as it may, you see, when government brings out some actions too, we must believe in our government. Instead of politicizing security. One of the problems we have in this country is politicization of security. For instance, like the National Livestock Transformation Plan, you know how people reacted to it, without even knowing the meaning of this process. Because livestock transformation plan...
But isn't that how it was brought up? So, for instance, yes. You hear governors, for instance, the Benue State governor, who was categorically against Ruga.
Yes.
Because how it came up was the way it trended around the country was through the term Ruga.
Yes.
And I remember that the Benue State government, when they talked about the National Livestock Transformation Plan, said they were not against that plan, but they were against the Ruga plan, because apparently it seemed that there was some error in terms of how it was being interpreted, what was in the National Livestock Transformation Plan, so much so that the vice president who has sat on that National Livestock Transformation Plan had to disown. They said they knew nothing about the Ruga policy. What they knew was the National Livestock Transformation Plan.
Yes, I agree with you. That is a lack of strategic communication. If you are not able to communicate to the people what your plans are, then people start to suspect there is a hidden agenda in whatever you want to do. Whatever that Ruga was, but I think from onset, the plan was this National Livestock Transformation Plan. But you see, we must also understand that, people sometimes get carried away in what government intentions are. And that is why governments must rein in their spokesmen and all that to make sure that there is strategic communication in their intent and plans to the public. The original plan was this livestock transformation plan. Ruga was floated somewhere, and I do not think it was, a process that was going to be really taken. Even the transformation plan itself and the Ruga, what is the difference? The difference is that instead of an isolated, implementation, it's going to be a holistic, implementation. And that is why it covers every nooks and corners of this country. But Ruga is, as a matter of fact, it's a rural games arrangement. And it caught the attention of the public because of the incidences in the North Central. But you know that this thing is not about, pastoralization is not about North Central alone. And this brings me to one of the critical problems we also have. Because we do not have, a correct process, of bringing forth, the need to have a regulated regime in pastoralism, a regulated regime in some of the activities that make the criminals thrive. For instance, like the mining illegal mining in Zamfara State. So when you do not have a regulated plan, some of these things come forth. So clearly, the transformation plan is enough to take care of this perennial crisis between herdsmen and the farmers.
There are huge questions around that, but let my colleagues in Lagos come in with their questions. Ayo and Coyote.
Well, thank you, Malpa, but we do have a guest here in Lagos, in the Lagos studio. He is Mr. Fatai Osheni, who is the former Commissioner of Police in Lagos and Benue States, an essay on security matters to the Governor of Oyo State. Thanks for your time this morning.
Good morning. Thanks.
Well, I would first of all want to ask you, from your experience as former Commissioner in a northern state, do you think we've been able, are there peculiarities in terms of security challenges in a particular area as opposed to others?
To an extent, but the trends now, you'll find out that there's something that is common now. Because when you talk of, yes, the Boko Haram thing has its own area that is limited to, but banditry generally, which also, gravitates to extremism. There is a uniform, it has a uniform character. Yes, people are talking of pastoralists and farmers quarrel and fighting. People are talking of kidnapping and armed robbery. It has a trend which it's uniform all over. But following the discussion from Abuja, I think what we still need to do is to keep on encouraging the security agencies. Yes, like the Boko Haram, it's been more than 10 years. Even the herdsmen and pastoralist thing, the pastoralist and the farmers clashes, it's not as if it is new. We've been having it more than 10 years ago. Yes, everyone will say we ought to have gotten a plan, a strategy to, curb this completely. But one thing with crime is that you cannot completely eradicate crime.
But we can at least track, forgive me for buttoning, we can at least track, because you talked about the Boko Haram thing, which many people have alluded to the fact that it's more of an ideology thing. But this ideology thing is not new to us. You'd remember in the 80s where we had Metatsini, and many people even allude to the fact that this Boko Haram is an offshoot of the Metatsini of those years. So it was as if we knew this was going to happen, yet we didn't seem to prepare.
One key thing for me, it's when you don't have institutional memory, you won't be able to, draw best practices. Because if you have institutional memory, if we've had Metatsini, and you know that some of these things will always come up. So you need to sit back. What did we do then? Where did we fail? How do we move on? But we do as if we don't have institutional memory, and we don't, adopt that best practices thing. Because asymmetric war, guerrilla war, you cannot completely stop it like that. Once you are fighting an asymmetric war, it's something that as you are taking a step, your enemies are also taking probably 3 steps. So what we just need to do is have, be uniform in our approach. Today we set up committee. Tomorrow we say one national security summit or whatever. We've had so many national security summits, and it doesn't appear as if someone is sitting out there to harvest all whatever recommendations and say, let us do this. You need to have, yes, technology is there, but you need to also have a motivated force to fight this thing. It's one thing for you to have technology. I think to an extent we built on our technology because almost periodically you will hear the military, either the Air Force saying, oh, we've acquired this, we've acquired that. But you also need a motivated workforce. And when we are doing the plan, even with the institutional memory, we must be focused. Once it comes to the issue of security, let us throw away politics, let us throw away religion. Because where you will say, oh, okay, is this group of people they are targeting, is this group of people that make up the military that have been sent there, or whatever, you've already deflated the personnel. When the personnel themselves, the officers and the foot soldiers that will work, are already going to those war theater with the feelings that, oh, somebody's body language is against whatever briefing we've been given. So you won't see serious commitment. And these are things that, from experience.
So forgive me, on whose table do we put what we're talking about now? You talked about this institutional memory. Well, some may also argue that in the 80s we had a military, government in place all through that time when the military arrived. So probably it was easier for them because of the control, central control and all of that. But in this kind of democracy, it is different. So on whose table are you putting these issues that you have raised now, deflating the motivation of officers and all of that?
With security, you still have a kind of central control. You have chief of defense staff coordinating most of these things. You have the service chiefs. It's for everyone that has this responsibility. The NSA is there. It's for everyone that has this responsibility to say that, look, this is not a competition. It's a complementary thing. No institution is superior to the other.
Is that what you think is happening?
One of those things. Because when all the institutions, in those days, you won't probably see a situation where, they will say Nigerian army decimated Boko Haram, Nigerian Air Force. The security agencies, there must be a central command and control, sort of. But where all the institutions seems to want to outdo each other and want to claim glory. The glory should be Nigerian government, the security institutions are doing this. But to find out that one institution is saying this, the other institution is saying another one, there must be a central command and control. There must be a spokesperson. It must be owned by all the institutions.
So you still think that there are security, apparatus, that there is no coordination, no unity of purpose?
I think so. In service and out of service, I've seen that. There mustn't be each of the agencies, coming to the press to talk differently. There must be synergy. They must work together for a common purpose. There is no superiority in it. It's a supportive thing. It's a collaborative effort. I want to say that we should have a situation where it's not going to be one security agency that will say, we've done this, we've done that. No, everybody is going to the press to say different things. And in some cases, you even find out that they are contradictory.
Do you think this is a function of scarcity of resources? Because, I mean, what you hear them say from time to time is not that security agencies are not well funded. Take the IGP, for example, recently saying that the police needs 250,000 rifles, 1,000 armored personnel carriers, 774 drones. And you wonder, that's huge, about 1 trillion naira. So maybe this is also a function of the fact that we're not even funding them as much as we ought to.
The thing is that in some cases, we probably don't do our homework very well before we even put our shopping list out. Some of the things we put out as a shopping list, by the time they're acquiring them, they are more or less consummated.
How do you mean?
Because you can sit down here now and say, okay, I need 1 trillion naira to acquire this, to acquire that. Before you go through the budgetary process, before all those things, because we don't manufacture them, before they come, it's going to be like 2 years. Meanwhile, the problems you want to solve has overwhelmed you. So you must be proactive, you must be futuristic, you must plan ahead. And it is one thing to acquire all the technologies, all the equipment, if the workforce is not well motivated. When it comes to security, it's about the most expensive. We've been seeing it in other climes, the amount of money they put in it. If America is going to launch whatever, a missile from whatever base to another base, you know what it costs. So when you have the money there, the workforce must be well motivated. It shouldn't be something that they would say, okay, the ration or the ration cash allowances that you are giving to the men, it is when the one for this month finishes that you are going to put on paper, and somebody will say, go and write AIE. It must be in a basket where they can easily pick it, because the guys that are there in the war theater, they don't have that opportunity of going to say, okay, I want to go and recoup. There must be a ready supply, a chain of supply that it won't even finish before you give them. If you're going to count bullets, ammunitions for someone that is facing maybe a gang of armed robbers or kidnappers that are well loaded, you see a gang of bandits coming to face you with 250 rounds of ammunition all together with the chain and everything, and you are giving five rounds of ammunition to people that will go and attack them. And it is when it's finished that they'll probably say, oh, let's quickly get to the headquarters to go. No, it must be readily available. The men must be highly motivated.
Okay.
That is not there. And that, once you motivate people, the political will of the commanders is also there. Then you have it done.
There's really a lot to say about this, because many people wonder if we're going to win this war, we really have to focus. But we'll come back to take on some of the things that we need to do to win this war against banditry and all shades of security when we come back from this break. Please stay with us.
This is not an auction. It is the reality of what the nation is turning into. Or perhaps it has already become the nightmare leaders promise against, where a day does not go by without terrorists, kidnappers, and bandits making the headlines. And this statistics, disheartening as it is, makes the day of others. This is one state out of many where thousands have either been killed or displaced.
We lost our people, as I'm talking to you now, almost 200 plus that my people died, that they killed them.
The issues with Nigeria are complex, and it has been said over time that the problems must be dealt with caution. But there comes a time where too much care becomes less, and that opens the door for those with machinations to take charge.
While the armed forces have effectively contained the territorial ambitions of the Boko Haram terrorists by substantially degrading their capacity to attack and wreak havoc, they remain intent on shedding blood and sowing fear.
Who is to blame for this? The fault may lie at the doorstep of inaction, whom for a long time has held back willpower's courage to put a stop to violence. Otherwise, what is the rationale behind clashes between farmers and herdsmen over land, or the killing of innocent children, women, and men?
Before, these people were living with them because they are Fulani people by tribe. They are living with us peacefully. But we don't know what happened, what bring this problem between we and them. For the first time, they are stealing our cows, goat, sheep, and whatever. Later, they come back and kidnap us. After that one again, they come and kill us.
This may have begun with a plan by those determined to bring the nation down to its knees, but it can only be stopped by those with the resolve to make sure this never happens. Orolu Ashonibare, Channels Television News.
Fatai Owosheni, former Commissioner of Police in Lagos and Benue, and now essay to the Oyo State Governor on Security Matters, is still with us here. And we're looking at all of these issues, especially as concerns security. Now, how do we begin to motivate the men? Well, perhaps one might say that the officers are motivated. How do we motivate the men, the people who really do the fighting, the police, the soldiers? What do we need to do to begin to motivate them?
You know, what I think we should be doing is that as much as we acquire equipment, tools to fight, we should also be having what do we need to sustain the men on the field. You probably need to go to where some of these guys are working. Experience from Benue State. There are some places that I went to go and look at mobile policemen in the bush, and you will probably, you know, burst into tears if you see them. And I sharing experience with people, even within the international community. I used to say that if you bring probably an American or someone out of Nigeria to that place, maybe frustration will kill the person, even because the fellow is already worn out with emotional depression, because you don't have how you relate with him. You don't have anything in place on how you relate with him, either from the office to the field where he is. You even find out that once you drop them there, hardly do people care as to how they're going to feed. You have put probably soldiers and policemen in places where there is no water for them to even take, you know, to brush them, to wash their mouth, talk less of taking a bath, to change uniform.
So how then do you think that the regional security that's being championed now, the Amotekun, which 5 states have signed into law already, how will that reverse this trend that you're talking about? What's the plan for motivation, for encouraging them to do what they're really needed to do?
For now, I think it's with all the gray areas that have been sorted out, I won't call it a regional security setting again. Each of the states has its own bill passed, yes, but there'll be collaboration. And what the Southwest governors are saying, and what some other governors are saying, is that, oh, we've seen some of these gaps. Even the state actors, that is the official security setting, we are the ones that probably breached the security infrastructure gap. We've seen it. And from what we've seen, we are now seeing that the non-state actors that we are more or less formalizing would be able to cater for them. Because there's always this feelings that, okay, if as a governor I've bought this equipment for this organization, before you know it, they will say something is happening in another state. Because once you purchase and give to that institution, those things belong to the institution. Okay. So you can see a situation where they will say, okay, bring some of these things that Lagos have to come and assist and reinforce another state. So what this, the architecture that is being put in place, it's not as if we don't have it. is because it wasn't formalized and they're not catered for. They are now saying that let's use the money to also help these non-state actors, and from there they'll be motivated to complement what the state actors, the security agencies have been doing before.
Okay. Well, let's go to Abuja. I'm sure Mark was also itching to ask her guest question, but I would like to thank you so much, Mr. Fatai Owusheni, who is the Special Assistant to the Governor of Oyo State on Security Matters. He was a Commissioner of Police in Benue and Lagos. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
All right, Mark.
Well, thank you, Kayode. Well, you heard our guest in Lagos. He talked about how sometimes the equipment, when we eventually get them, because of the process it takes, can come in and they're no longer as useful as they would have been, when they were initially asked for. What do you want? Do you want to quickly respond to that?
Well, that is more of a hypothesis than reality as far as I'm concerned, because hardwares are enduring and they're meant to last for a very long time.
Yeah,
so I wouldn't know.
You don't know if technology would have moved on.
Yeah, I wouldn't know. The technology does not just move on and leave those hardwares behind, because when you make a proposal for what you want to acquire, for instance, if you want to acquire platforms like helicopters and all that, so those helicopters are meant for a very long period of time. And even if you want to purchase an armored personnel carrier, they're going to last for a very long period of time. So I wouldn't know the particular equipment he's talking about that by the time they come from shelf, and they would have been outdated. Even as small as binoculars, the binoculars are meant to last for a very long time.
Yeah, but drones, we know that the drone technology, for instance, is evolving almost on a daily basis.
We don't even have them now. We don't even have anyone now to say that it will be overtaken by time and space. The issue is knowing what you want and going for them. One good thing that he said there was that our budgetary system is really inadequate to cater for the rank and file. We must now try to think outside the box, to look at how to fund security agencies, because if you rely on this budget, you cannot get what you need. These are the operational challenges I was talking about.
You also talked about motivation, lack of motivation. Just underneath that tweet of Ahmed Salkida, you see a number of Nigerians, showing pictures of their loved ones who participated in the battle and lost their lives. Just about last week, the Nigerian Army reported the case of a soldier who killed 4 of his colleagues and turned the gun on himself. I think he injured about 2 other people or so. Those ones were receiving treatment. I believe that they're getting better, but ended up killing himself. People will say it's as a result of depression or frustration. That is getting rather extreme, and perhaps also a lack of focus on the mental state of those whom we are sending to fight this, prosecute this war.
Not necessarily so. That's what they call battle fatigue. Once you keep a soldier in the battle for a long time, these things are bound to occur. That is why I connected with him when they talk about operational challenges. For instance, we don't have enough manpower. If you have enough manpower, you're not supposed to stay in that theater for more than 9 months. But you see a situation where they spend more than that, and even longer than that. So battle fatigue sets in, and there's this cycle, bad feelings of, what is going on? I've been here for a long time, but I've not seen my wife. I don't even know what's happening to my wife now. I don't even know. So it's battle fatigue. So if we have enough manpower, they are going to be rotated, as it should be. Maybe 9 months there, then you go back home, bring some other people to replace them, relief in line. But when you don't have enough manpower, and you keep these troops there as long as you want to keep them there, without relief in line or appropriate rotation, battle fatigue sets in. Not because there is no motivation. Battle fatigue is the key issue there.
You have said that we should rejig our security architecture. What changes would you like to see in 2 minutes, please?
Now, what are we talking about? There has to be, a complete synergy between the security agencies. That's what they call interagency cooperation. Not that it's not there now, but we have to up it. Then there must be a deliberate intelligence sharing. Not that it's not there now, but we also have to up it.
Do we dismiss the reports we saw about rivalry between the NSA and the Chief of Staff as well, and what effect that could have on
the NSA, the advisor to the President on Security, has identified, what he thinks, are big problems. So it's not left for, the leadership to address them as they were. What the NSA was talking about was not really a lack of interagency cooperation. It's talking about maybe superstructure and things that are supposed to be done that are being done, as it were. But when you talk of interagency cooperation, it's an idea, like he was trying to say over there in Lagos, that the question of these arms saying, I have done this, or we are going to do this, and we're going to do that, should not be the case. With a strict interagency cooperation, working together. And that is why I mentioned that I-Star earlier. Synchronization of battle operations in a theater. So if you have it without interagency cooperation, there cannot be synchronization of the various actions in battle line without interagency cooperation. So we need interagency cooperation. We need intelligence sharing. And if we don't do this within ourselves, the international community will not even come in.
Well, it is interesting to see that only recently the United States has put a ransom on, or should we say a bounty now, on the head of the leader Shekau, Abubakar Shekau, and anyone who can bring him in will get $7 million. But we'll see how that will eventually ginger the war against terrorism. But we have to thank you for coming on Sunrise City this morning. Retired Major General Cecil Esika-Igwe is a former military officer. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me, Mark.
The program continues shortly. Please stay with us.